Coming in at number 5, we have Casey Becker from Scream. Now, I think it's safe to say that the opening 8 minutes of the first Scream movie are utterly memorable, simply because of how shocking it was and how sad Casey Becker's death was. Released in 1996 and directed by Wes Craven, Scream stars the likes of Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Rose McGowan, Matthew Lillard, Skeet Ulrich, and Drew Barrymore, with the film following Sidney Prescott, a high school student who becomes tormented by a mysterious killer dubbed Ghostface. I should preface this point by saying that Scream was marketed as a Drew Barrymore movie. She was front and center on the poster, with her name securing funding and distribution, because in 1996 she was one of the biggest stars. I mean, she still is, just not as big. So of course, when these first 8 minutes of the movie took place, folks were left gobsmacked. The movie kicks off with Casey Becker, played by Barrymore, home alone making popcorn and getting ready to watch a horror movie. However, when the phone rings, she is forced to fight for her life. On the other end of the phone is a mysterious voice, a voice that torments Casey, making her play a game that will always end in her death. She is made to answer questions about horror movies, and when she gets a question wrong, the lights outside flick on, revealing her dead boyfriend. Ghostface then enters the home, chasing Casey around before she finally escapes outside. She runs through her yard with her parents' headlights in the distance, indicating their arrival back home. But they won't make it in time. Ghostface stabs Casey multiple times, leaving her to die, as her parents enter their home without even realizing their daughter is dying just a few feet away from them. It's very sad, very shocking, and more importantly, stole the technique which Hitchcock used in Psycho, in which he fooled the audience into believing they knew who the protagonist was, but they were wrong. Before we jump into number 4, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, really helps us out a lot. Coming in at number 4, we have Tina from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, in our previous list, we discussed the unfortunate death of Glenn in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we're back again, but this time with Tina. Released in 1984 and directed by Wes Craven, A Nightmare on Elm Street follows Freddy Krueger, a villain who plagues people's nightmares, pulling them into Dreamworld and attempting to kill them with his bladed glove. And of course, if he kills you in Dreamworld, you die in real life. A group of teenagers in Springwood, Ohio soon discover this as they become tormented by the deranged killer who won't let up until they are all dead. Now, Tina is unfortunately the first victim in the Nightmare on Elm Street movie, with her suffering a very grisly demise. Tina hosts a sleepover with a few of her friends after having nightmares of a disfigured man in her dreams. However, when Tina falls asleep, she dreams of being chased by that same man. In her dream, she goes into her backyard and out into an alleyway, only to see Freddy Krueger in his long arms and bladed glove. We are informed right off the bat of the power Freddy Krueger possesses in Dreamworld, with him being able to extend his arms to an absurd length before chasing after Tina and attacking her. Now, while this is happening in Dreamworld, in reality, Tina's boyfriend is witnessing Tina get violently thrown around the bedroom by an invisible force, before she is cut open by sharp invisible blades, and blood is spurted across the room, before her lifeless body drops back onto the bed. It's all very violent and shocking, and the best way to kickstart a terrifying movie. Coming in at number 3, we have Paul Allen from American Psycho. American Psycho is a classic in the horror genre, with Christian Bale giving a performance that is unrivaled and one that deserves way more acclaim than it got. Released in 2000 and directed by Mary Harron, American Psycho stars the likes of Christian Bale, Willem Dafoe, Jared Leto, Josh Lucas, Chloe Sevigny, and Reese Witherspoon, with the movie following Patrick Bateman, played by Bale, an investment banker in the 1980s who, over the course of the movie, is revealed to be an American Psycho, with his gruesome life as a serial killer being revealed over the course of the movie, with Bateman preying upon prostitutes, work colleagues, and even random strangers. Now, in one of the most jarring and unexpected scenes, Patrick Bateman lures his co-worker Paul Allen back to his apartment after a night of drinking. Now, all is okay to start with, that is until Allen becomes increasingly aware of his environment, the covered furniture, the paper protecting the carpet. What exactly is going on? Bateman, however, seems unfazed, turning on Hip to be Square and dancing around his apartment while putting on a raincoat, with us, the audience, knowing exactly what's about to go down. While moving around his apartment, Bateman delivers a monologue about the artistic merit of the song, before grabbing a very polished axe and brutally murdering Allen. Now, although we don't see direct shots of the death, we do however see the blood spatter all over the face of the grinning Bateman, and that alone is incredibly disturbing. Coming in at number 2, we have Face Chopped Off from Laid to Rest. Now, Laid to Rest was a hit or miss among horror movie lovers, with many criticizing emphasizing its abundance of gore as well as its weak storyline. However, it is a movie that does seem to have a loyal following, and it does have a slew of amazing killing scenes if you're a lover of gore. Released in 2009 and directed by Robert Greenhall, Laid to Rest is a slasher that follows a young girl who wakes up in a casket with a head injury and no memory of the incident that took place. She soon realizes that she was abducted by a serial killer and must now fight to stay alive. Now, there are many moments in this movie that will linger with viewers, however the one that stands out the most to me is the death of Johnny and his girlfriend. The pair arrive in a car to check on Cindy, played by Lena Headey. However, the killer is already there. In this very gory and disturbing scene, Johnny gets out of his car to investigate an incident. However, when he returns to his car, a blade is thrown right into the side of his face, before the killer arrives and drags the blade up, cutting off Johnny's entire face in the process. It's all very sudden and very gory, with the girlfriend left with nothing to do but to scream for help, but help is not coming. She then meets a grisly end with her innards quite literally becoming outards. It's great. And finally, in at number 1 we have Staircase from High Tension. High Tension is one of the more depraved and disturbing movies on our list, with it certainly lingering with all those who have seen the movie, particularly one scene. Well, if you're me, that is, this scene. This one I just can't seem to shake. Released in 2003 and directed by Alexandre Aja, High Tension is a French slasher that follows best friends Marie and Alexia, who decide to spend a weekend at Alexia's parents' secluded farmhouse. However, on the night of their arrival, their getaway turns into a living nightmare as they are forced to fight for their own survival with a killer on the loose. Now, the movie did garner a slew of negative reviews, specifically surrounding its plot twist that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Roger Ebert even stated, I quote, "The plot hole is not only large enough to drive a truck through, but in fact does have a truck driven right through it." Classic. Now, it's not the ending that I'm going to be discussing or the completely ridiculous plot twist that gets worse and worse with each watch. It's actually the moment when the intruder breaks into the home and commits one of the most brutal murders. In the middle of the night, the doorbell rings, and as we know, it's not wise to open the door to strangers in the night, with the father learning this the hard way. He is whacked on the head by the intruder. The man then attempts to drag himself to safety, but safety never comes, with the intruder then shoving the man's head through the railing of the staircase, causing it to get wedged. Then he does the worst thing imaginable. He grabs a chest of drawers and rams the head clean off. It's absolutely disgusting and incredibly memorable. Coming in at number 5 we have Dick Halloran from The Shining. The Shining deserves a place on every single one of our lists, simply for being one of the greatest horror movies of all time, with one of the most unsettling villains and stories ever written. Released in 1980 and directed by Stanley Kubrick and based upon the novel of the same name by Stephen King back in 1977, the movie stars the likes of Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Scatman Crothers, and Danny Lloyd, with the movie centering on Jack Torrance, a writer and recovering alcoholic who heads to the isolated Overlook Hotel with his family after accepting the position as the off-season caretaker. Now, as we know, things descend into madness for Jack and his wife Wendy and son Danny, with Jack losing his mind and being influenced by the supernatural inhabitants of the hotel, which is housing dark secrets. His son Danny Torrance, however, possesses the ability called The Shining, a psychic ability which enables him to look into the hotel's horrific past. It also allows him to communicate with hotel cook Dick Halloran, who also possesses this ability. So when Jack begins to turn on his family, after losing his grip on reality, Dick senses Danny's danger and heads to the hotel to rescue him and Wendy, but Jack knows he's coming, and as Dick approaches, he aims an axe right for his chest and kills him. It's a brutal and unexpected scene, with it confirming to us all that hope is lost inside of the Overlook Hotel. Before we jump into number 4, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot in the YouTube algorithm. Please do it if you like me. And I like me, so I would like it. Coming in at number 4, we have Frankie Cheeks from Final Destination 3. I know, I've spoken about Final Destination 3 numerous times on this channel, specifically in this series and fairly recently, but there are just so many deaths worth discussing, so here it is again. Released in 2006 and directed by James Wong, Final Destination 3 stars the likes of Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ryan Merriman, Alex Johnson, and Amanda Crew, with it following the same Final Destination formula as the previous movies in the franchise. Someone has a premonition about a catastrophic event that will kill many people. Before anything can happen, they try to remove themselves from the situation with a few people following them. Then the catastrophic event takes place, killing people just like they said it would. However, that's not where it ends. The survivors are then picked off one by death in the order they would have died in the catastrophic accident. It's the same in each movie, and honestly, it doesn't get old. It's always entertaining. Now, in Final Destination 3 specifically, a group of students find themselves on a roller coaster, with one student, Wendy, having a premonition of the ride crashing. Herself and a few others get off of the ride, and then of course, it crashes. It derails. Then, like I said, the survivors begin to get picked off one by one in the order they would have died on the roller coaster. Now, one of the most shocking and disgusting deaths is that of Frankie Cheeks. In one particular scene, Wendy and another survivor pull into a drive-thru before a runaway semi-trailer truck comes speeding down the hill heading straight for them. They manage to escape the car in time, with the truck smashing into the car, causing a motor to fly out of the car and kill Frankie Cheeks, who just happened to be sitting in front of them, by slicing him through the skull. It's brutal. Coming in at number 3, we have Head Stomp from Halloween. This moment has since become iconic and was relatively shocking considering how things usually go down in the Halloween franchise. Released in 2018 and directed by David Gordon Green, Halloween stars the likes of Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, Will Patton, and Andy Matichak, with it following Laurie Strode, the survivor of the original Halloween movie, who prepares to face off against Michael Myers in a final showdown on Halloween night, around 40 years after she survived the original killing spree. Now, the 2018 Halloween is a direct sequel to the 1978 movie of the same name, which many were thankful about, including me, considering the franchise began to create ludicrous plot points, such as Laurie Strode being Michael's sister, which thankfully is not canon, so we can all sleep peacefully tonight. Now, one of the characters in the movie, Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Michael's psychiatrist and Sam Loomis's former student, begins to develop an obsession with Michael, with it being revealed that he orchestrated Michael's escape so he can study him in the wild. He even goes on to attack those who might get in the way of that. However, Michael doesn't seem to care too much about this, because in one epic and brutal scene, Michael stands over Sartain, lifts his boot and stomps on his head, exploding it in the process in one shocking moment. It was incredibly jarring and shocking. Yes, Halloween is a slasher, but it's never been one to have blood and guts flying everywhere, but now it is, I guess. Coming in at number 2, we have Jonah's death from The Green Inferno. The Green Inferno was a tough film for me to even get through, and I saw this one on the big screen. Oh boy, how I have regrets about that. Released in 2013 but making its theatrical debut in 2015, The Green Inferno is a cannibal horror movie directed by Eli Roth, with it being an homage to the cannibal movies of the 70s and the 80s, specifically Cannibal Holocaust. Starring the likes of Lorenzo Izzo, Ariel Levy, Daryl Sabara, and Kirby Bliss Blanton, the film follows a group of activists who are forced to fight for their lives when they are captured by a cannibalistic tribe in the Amazon rainforest. Now, the movie kicks off with the activists' plane crashing into the jungle, with the pilot dying as well as several other passengers. As the remaining survivors hunt for a GPS phone, they are ambushed and tranquilized by blowpipe darts. They are then taken to a small village and imprisoned in bamboo cages. This is where things begin to get truly terrifying for the group. One of the group members, Jonah, is taken by the tribe, with one of the female elders ritualistically cutting out his eyes before being dismembered and decapitated by the tribal leader, with his remains being cooked and eaten by the rest of the tribe. It's an absolutely horrific ordeal for Jonah, the group, as well as viewers watching, as we are forced to witness absolutely everything that is unfolding. That scene makes me feel physically sick, as well as the scene that follows it immediately after, which is a girl having violent diarrhea in the corner. It's not what I wanted to see, to be honest. And finally, in at number 1, we have Stanley and Andy from I Spit on Your Grave. Now, it's no surprise that I Spit on Your Grave has made its way onto our list. However, it may be a surprise that it has taken this long. Released in 2010 and directed by Stephen R. Monroe, I Spit on Your Grave is a revenge horror movie remake of the controversial 1978 movie of the same name. Starring the likes of Sarah Butler, Jeff Branson, Daniel Franzi, Rodney Eastman, and Chad Lindbergh, the movie follows Jennifer, a writer who rents an isolated cabin in the country to work on her novel. However, her world is quickly shattered when a group of men attack and torture her and leave her for dead. She isn't giving up without a fight though, with Jennifer returning for vengeance, trapping the men one by one and inflicting torture upon them. As is the case with many exploitation movies, I Spit on Your Grave is tough to swallow, with the initial attack scene involving Jennifer being incredibly offensive considering how long it lingers on the violence, with the subsequent attack on the men being more cartoonish and horror-flicky, not taking itself very seriously. Saying that though, the two deaths involving Stanley and Andy are quite intense. Starting with Stanley, he is captured in a bear trap tied to a tree surgery and then has fish cuts smeared across his face. Jennifer then proceeds to pin open his eyelids with fish hooks, resulting in birds pecking out his eyes. Next is Andy. He is tied up and dunked into a bathtub filled with lye, also known as sodium hydroxide, which ends up burning off his entire face. The two deaths are a lot, but like I said, nothing comes close to the torture Jennifer experienced at the beginning of the movie. Coming in at number 5, we have Annihilation, the bear scene. Annihilation is an insane thrill ride of a movie with an ending that left many folks torn, but it's not the ending that we're going to be discussing. Instead, it's the bear scene. Released in 2018 and directed by Alex Garland, Annihilation stars the likes of Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gina Rodriguez, Tessa Thompson, Tuva Novotny, and Oscar Isaac, with the story following a group of explorers who enter what is known as the Shimmer, a mysterious quarantine zone of mutating plants and animals that was created by an alien presence. Now, everything inside of the Shimmer is strange, but arguably the most strange is the mutated bear. During one moment in the movie, the team had been bound to chairs by another character after slowly being driven insane by the Shimmer. That is when they begin to hear a call for help from a character who was killed earlier on in the movie. However, they soon learn that the cries are coming from the mutated bear, which killed the character Cass and absorbed parts of her into itself. Gina Rodriguez is then brutally killed by the bear, with her jaw being torn clean off, before Tessa Thompson frees herself and shoots the bear dead. What a hero. It's a terrifying and nerve-wracking moment that lingered with audiences long after the credits rolled. Before we jump into number 4, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot in the YouTube algorithm. It pushes our content out, and at the end of the day, I think we all want more of me. Coming in at number 4, Evil Dead, Evil Meets Chainsaw. Now I'm talking about the 2013 version of Evil Dead here, so sorry to let some of you down. Directed by Fede Alvarez and starring the likes of Jane Levy, Shiloh Fernandez, Lou Taylor Pucci, Jessica Lucas, and Elizabeth Blackmore, Evil Dead is of course a soft reboot of the original Evil Dead movie, and follows a group of 5 people who become haunted and killed off by supernatural entities while staying at a remote cabin in the woods. Now, some backstory before we get into the climactic moment. The group of friends stay at the cabin while one of them, Mia, attempts to overcome her heroin addiction. After doing some exploring, they discover in the basement a variety of things: rotting animal corpses, a shotgun, and of course the Naturum de Monto, with one of the group members, Eric, reading an incantation from the book, and in turn awakening a malevolent force. Classic. This also results in an abomination version of Mia arriving, with vines coming out of its mouth and possessing her. Now, in the climactic showdown between Mia and the abomination, Mia is forced to fight for survival against the Taker of Souls, who is in the form of Mia. The two engage in a truly bloody battle, with a downpour of blood raining down on them. Limbs are sliced off with a chainsaw, with Mia even taking the chainsaw to the face of the abomination, slicing it completely in two. It's a grisly and gruesome conclusion to a great movie, making it one of the goriest horrors out there. Coming in at number 3, we have Upgrade, the kitchen fight. I think it's safe to say that horror movies have taught us many things, but one thing is that literally anything can be used as a weapon. If you try hard enough, that is, and that's what goes down in Upgrade. Released in 2018 and directed by Lee Wannell, Upgrade is a cyberpunk action horror film starring the likes of Logan Marshall Green, Betty Gabriel, and Harrison Gilbertson, with it following a technophobe who is implanted with a chip that allows him to control his body after a mugging leaves him paralyzed. Some backstory before we begin. Gray Trace, played by Logan Marshall Green, is a mechanic who was involved in a car crash alongside his wife, with 4 men proceeding to attack them, shooting Gray in the neck and leaving him paralyzed. This is when he accepts a STEM implant, a chip that would supposedly allow him to walk. However, STEM is way more powerful than Gray initially realized, with the technology convincing Gray to hunt down his wife's attacker, and also giving him capabilities beyond his wildest dreams, essentially making him unstoppable. In one particular scene, Gray breaks into the home of one of the attackers and a fight breaks out. He allows STEM to take full control of his body, with him grabbing anything in the kitchen to use as a weapon against his opponent. Before we know it, STEM grabs a kitchen knife, but instead of stabbing the attacker, STEM pulls it up to the attacker's mouth and makes his smile a whole lot bigger. It's absolutely horrific to watch and a horrible way to die, that's for sure. Coming in at number 2, we have Final Destination 5, The Gymnast. I think we can all agree at this point that we can't have a worst horror movie death list without including one of the Final Destination movies on it. This time we're discussing 5. Released in 2011 and directed by Steve Quayle, Final Destination 5 is a 3D supernatural horror that, like always, follows the same Final Destination formula. It's a classic. A premonition is had, an accident occurs, and death begins picking off the survivors one by one. Now, in Final Destination 5, the main catastrophic event is the collapse of a bridge, with Sam Lawton having a premonition of the collapse before it even happens, in turn saving a few survivors who, like I said, begin to get picked off one by death. Now, the death of Candace is perhaps one of the more grisly deaths, with it going from 0 to 100 so damn fast. Not to mention the manner in which she dies is utterly insane. Just wait. Like all deaths in the Final Destination movies, a series of chain reactions is what results in the death, and the same is said for this one. We're in a gymnasium. The AC is kicked on and a fan plugged in to keep the gymnast from overheating. However, the cord is frayed with the wires exposed. Classic. The AC then begins to leak and surprise, right onto the exposed wires. The AC begins to rattle, dropping a screw onto the beam that Candace is doing a routine on. But don't worry, she doesn't land on it, and the water is avoided. Phew. Instead, she heads to the bars to perform another routine, but the bars are loose. While she's swinging away, another unfortunate soul steps on the screw, screaming out in pain, falling off the beam, knocking over the ball of chalk, which lands directly in front of the fan, which blows the chalk all over the room and right into Candace's face as she's swinging. She then falls and somehow manages to snap and break every single bone in her body. It's ridiculous but incredibly gruesome, and perhaps one of the worst ways to go out. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Apostle, Purification. Now, this is a movie that completely blindsided me, mostly due to the fact that the tone shifts significantly halfway through, and it leaves you with your hand over your mouth. Released in 2018 and directed by Gareth Evans, Apostle is a period horror movie starring the likes of Dan Stevens, Christine Forsyth, Paul Higgins and Michael Sheen, with it following a British man who heads to a remote island to rescue his sister from an evil cult. Now, this may sound familiar to you, and that's because it is heavily inspired by The Wicker Man, and you'll notice similar elements throughout. Thomas Richardson heads to the island not long after a ransom is set for his sister, and while there he poses as a convert, encountering the leader of the cult alongside 2 convicts. They claim that the island was rendered fertile through blood sacrifices, with it also being revealed that the cult are no longer willing to pay for the continuous animal sacrifices, meaning they need to move on to human ones. Now, in one of the most shocking and disturbing scenes, one character, Jeremy, is tied up for a purification ritual, which is all due to his girlfriend being killed by another member of the group, with Jeremy being framed for the death. Now, the purification ritual involves a drill being inserted into the top of Jeremy's head, until it quite literally explodes. It marks a significant shift in the movie, which up until this point was a bog-standard folk horror, shifted into a very gruesome and bloody horror movie. Drill to the head. Horrible way to go.